Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and on today's episode of Early Access Reviews, we are going to be taking a look at the latest S-Rank Fire Stun agent, Ju Fufu. Basically, I've played around with her. She sort of feels like a burst and off-field Dazer with a very comfortable and low barrier to entry skill point in order for us to utilize her kit effectively, which is going to be perfect for casuals such as myself. She feels very similar to Coleda, where you basically swap her in, use your skill and ultimate when available, and after pressing the dodge attack, which is where she starts spinning on the little popcorn cat, you can then swap out immediately into the on-field DPS or the secondary support, and that is essentially how her entire kit will function because it basically sort of just plays by itself, right? So her build is also going to be very straightforward, where you want to stack on 3400 attack for the maximum crit damage increase of 50% for the entire squad, as well as 50% crit rate in order to utilize the 4-piece king set to its highest efficiency, right? And for Ju Fufu, her personal damage is actually pretty respectable for like a Daze sub DPS thingy, and with the added utility of the 4000 decibels cap as well as the 300 decibel refund after using your ultimate, Ju Fufu can open up quite a lot of potential in our current and potentially future team comps. Jumping straight into the character kit, her gimmick is essentially based on these two key terms, might and momentum, both of which are very easy to utilize as a burst Dazer, right? She's sort of basically like a burst Dazer. You want to make use of building up momentum, which is gonna be this little fist over here, and the momentum would then translate back into might when you swap her off field, and then afterwards it will just sort of place by itself, as I'm gonna be explaining over here, right? So for Ju Fufu, she stores up to 200 might and 12 momentum, so overcapping is completely possible and does not punish the casual player base. And she also has this little pet summon popcorn machine cat thingy, the Huwei, giving 20 might once every 5 seconds, and is also basically permanently on field dealing the fire damage against the enemies, right? Roughly 4 to 5 days per hit from what I've been seeing so far, so in the course of the battle it's actually not too bad at all, right? So for the momentum, which is going to be seen from the fist icon, you can gain 3 momentum stacks from your EX skill, 1 momentum stack from your parry assist, which can only happen once every 10 seconds, as well as your ultimate giving you 6 stacks instantly, capping at 15 stacks maximum. So once you gain momentum from all of these different mechanics, she can then do the fire spin, which is the dodge attack, consumes 1 momentum, and this will allow her to deal fire damage on top of providing you 25 might. So might is going to be the bar right beside the momentum below her actual profile picture, right? So as long as there is momentum, which is going to be the fist icon, she will continue this fire spin move even when she is off field until all momentum stacks has been consumed. And then this can bring us into the might category, which is going to be the energy bar or the little gauge. You can see there's a little line in the middle, which is going to be the maximum cap of 200, right? So your EX skill gives you 80 might, Huwei, like I mentioned, gives you 20 might once every 5 seconds, and consuming 1 momentum gives you 25 might, caps at 200, which means that it is very easy to hit the 100 might category the moment you get 1 EX skill off. And upon reaching 100 might when dealing fire damage, which is always going to be the case when you do have enough stacks of momentum, she will automatically trigger a chain attack with her popcorn hit. You can see the little cat thing just started making popcorns, dealing fire as well as Daze damage itself, both very respectable. The actual damage not so much, but the Daze damage multiplier is actually at the 332%, which is very nice. You will only swap in Ju Fufu once you have enough energy for EX skill, or if you already have enough decibels to let go of her ultimate. And once you have gained enough momentum stacks, you can then do the fire spin once with a dodge basic and immediately swap off field to maintain her Daze damage output, because she's gonna constantly do this fire spin, and eventually when it hits 100 might, it will then let go of the free chain attack, with all of these happening while your units are going to be on field, right? So everything from Ju Fufu's kit, it is completely automatic without any need for intervention, including the automatic chain attack as well as the continuous momentum consumption, which is going to be seen from the fire spin as well as the popcorn attack, right? So to summarize some of the key notes, you do want to ensure to get the maximum 50% crit damage buff from the core passive by hitting 3400 attack. On top of that, you also want to activate the best in slot 4-piece king, which is going to require you to get 50% crit rate. Now, without a signature W engine, this can be a little bit hard to achieve without using a triple attack percentage main stat. As you can see over here, I tried out with Koleda's signature weapon, offering 80% impact. It is gonna be quite far off if you only have 2 attack percentage main stat, right? So other than that, her personal damage is also pretty noticeable. So building her with a mix of crit while not forsaking impact seems to be the way to go. And I don't really feel the energy regeneration issues that much because your momentum, you can gain it outside from using an EX skill as well, which is going to be once every 10 seconds from simply parrying, right? And another point, her decibel refund as well as the decibel maximum cap at 4000, it does allow you to do a triple Yixuan ultimate after building her up before the burst phase, right? So you want to get your 4000 decibel points on Yixuan, and then after you get the maximum Chiba thingy to let her go of another ultimate. After letting go of these 2 ultimate instantly, you can summon the boss, and afterwards, toward the very end, you should be enough to get your final 3rd ultimate. And to my knowledge, this is probably one of the few ways where Yixuan can comfortably get a 3 ultimate burst within the entire window, right? So I also noticed that for some enemies, Ju Fufu may have some issues landing her hits when off field if they move around way too much, since her boss attack, right, when she does a little spin, the tracking can be quite limited from excessive enemy movements, especially like the dog that can't just dodge all over the place, or if you're gonna be fighting against a bringer, right, all the different balls. If they move around too much, there is a good chance that she might miss, so do take that into consideration. But generally speaking, a full daze on the boss, or rather the stun, it is gonna be achieved from 2 rotations involving her EX skill, or 1 rotation involving her ultimate, right? Remember to always use Ju Fufu's ultimate outside of the enemy daze, because why would you use your stun's ultimate when the enemy is dazed, right? So always the ultimate before the guy is dazed, and weave in Yixuan as much as possible to gain enough of her energy as well as the passive stacks for her to unleash the highest amount of damage during the burst window once Ju Fufu does all of her daze damage, right? And one last point, it is Ju Fufu herself, even though she is like a all-field DPS, she technically is on-field all the time, but you do need to ensure that your momentum and might is going to be balanced via your perfect parries, EX energy skills, as well as your ultimates. And Ju Fufu only requires a very small amount of attention from the players to, first of all, use the ultimate and EX whenever possible, and second of all, use a fire spin attack once you generated enough momentum stacks. And that is pretty much the entirety of Ju Fufu's kit, right? And then jumping into a quick little note over here, comparing Ju Fufu to other dazers, right? Other stunners in Zenless Zone Zero. Now at this point, we already have 6 5-star, right? 6 S-rank dazers in Zenless Zone Zero. So here's a rough summary of what every single dazer has to offer for their respective teams, right? Now remember that the units piloting and playstyle differs drastically between units, so do take the buffs only at face value without considering the actual piloting mechanics of every individual unit, right? So you can see over here in this little table, we have Koleda, Lycon, Trigger, Qingyi, Lighter, as well as Ju Fufu, right? So Koleda is gonna be our burst dazer with a 70% chain attack buff. Lycon is also gonna be a burst with 25% stun and multiplier and 25% ice rest down. Trigger is technically our true all-field dazer, built-in aftershock, 35% stun multiplier even when the enemy is not stunned. And Qingyi is gonna be one of our only on-field dazer with a massive 80% stun multiplier. And Lighter is gonna be our burst dazer, 15% ice and fire rest down, additional 3 seconds of daze time, as well as 75% ice and fire damage. Lastly, coming to Ju Fufu, she's gonna be our burst slash all-field dazer with 50% crit damage buff, 20% chain attack, 40% ultimate damage, 1000 decibel cap, as well as a 300 decibel refund when it's still on with the respective teammates, right? So at this point, I just want to be completely honest, I'm way too much of a casual and a tourist to offer a detailed answer as to whether Ju Fufu is the better or worse dazer compared to the others in this lineup, especially in other team comps. But I can confidently say Ju Fufu is going to be a definitive upgrade in Yixuan from the decibel gains alone, being one of the only pieces of the puzzle that allows for a triple outburst window, on top of the entire kit synergizing extremely well with her being off-field, Yixuan being on-field, and the panda is just going to be doing whatever the panda is going to be doing, right? So in general, feeling from playing with Ju Fufu with the buffs excluded, right, just from playing her alone, it does feel very smooth, which is kind of comparable to my experiences playing with Koleda and Trigger, and I can foresee Ju Fufu being very suitable in a lot of different team comps, even outside of Yixuan, because crit damage buff, chain attack buff, ultimate damage buff, the decibel cap, as well as refunds, they're all very, very universal multipliers and buffs that can be applied to pretty much almost every single team possible, right? And on top of all these things, her personal damage damage is going to be quite considerable. But at this point, I think most of the Dazes nowadays, they are also going to be building on crit because there's no other way you're going to be building impact, right? So that's pretty much all I have for Ju Fufu versus other Dazes. In terms of whether or not you should be pulling for her, kindly check out the actual kit when she actually launches in the future. Jumping into the W engine for Ju Fufu, Roaring Furnace, right? This S1's most impactful value is gonna be from the 30% attack buff unique to all of our stun class agents, which allows for a double instead of triple attack percentage main stat to hit the 3400 attack buff. So from the Daze perspective, like the how much more impact you're gonna be dealing, other W engines can offer similar timings as well as utility. The additional team-wide 10% damage up to 2 stacks is quite nice, but they are considered as separate timings, so there is a chance to not have 100% uptime. For Ju Fufu's chain attack frequency, especially with how her momentum and might works, is not that big of an issue, but if you want to use this, for example, with like Coleda, then that might be a little bit difficult, right? Then the most noticeable side grade outside of this signature W engine is going to be Coleda's S1, giving all field energy regeneration and impact increase, which are all very helpful to pretty much any Dazer, right? This will sacrifice potentially a crit main stat on the slot 4, but triple attack with high impact from Coleda can still be good, especially if you're able to obtain these kind of crit rate subsets to hit the bare minimum 50% crit rate. Then jumping into the build itself is a very straightforward build with a brand new drive this year, the 4-piece king. The aim is to basically make use of the 4-piece king because it synergizes with Ju Fufu perfectly and do whatever it takes to hit 3400 attack and 50% crit rate to proc the full effects of Ju Fufu's core passive as well as the king's 4-piece. She does have a built-in 19.4% crit rate, so it makes the benchmark a lot more accessible to the player base, right? So for the 4-piece, you have a 6% Daze as well as when a character is going to stun blah blah blah, increase crit damage by all squad members for 15%, and with at 50, right, it's gonna be another 15 lasting for 15 seconds, which means that you can get potentially up to a 30% crit damage buff. If you combine it with Ju Fufu's base kit, that is a whopping 80% crit damage buff to the entire team. So very nice. For the secondary subset, I would say crit rate is gonna be the most universal because it basically gives you a free crit rate to add on towards your 50% crit rate multiplier. If you already have enough crit rate, you could consider a 2-piece attack, or if you really want to min-max because you already hit the 3450% crit rate, then 2-piece impact could also be considered, right? Then for the 4, 5, 6 store, it's going to be attack percentage, attack percentage, attack percentage, and then if you can hit 3400, you can consider swapping out slot 4 for crit rate or slot 6 for impact. So whichever one is going to be more important, I would say number 1 goal is always 3400 attack, and then number 2 goal is going to be the 50% crit rate. And if you can achieve both of these goals at the same time, then sacrificing one of the attack slot for the impact is gonna be the best alternative. So that's pretty much it for Ju Fufu's build. Very straightforward, and for the subsets, go for the crit ratio with more emphasis on crit rate to hit that 50%. Now jumping into Ju Fufu's Mindscape for M1, which in my opinion is very powerful for M1, increase crit rate by 12%, so that already lowers your barrier to entry for your gearing requirements, immediately gains 100 might, and for every single chain attack if against a stun target, the stun damage multiplier increased by 35%, lasting for 30 seconds. So this is, in my opinion, extremely good M1, giving us the very valuable 35% stun damage multiplier on top of the 100 might, which easily procs to 200 might after your immediate first EX skill when you enter into any shield defense, right? So very powerful M1. And then for the M2 is gonna be an additional 22% crit damage in Tiger's Roar, and whenever anyone activates the ultimate, you gain 3 points of momentum. So this equates to 72% crit damage buff, assuming you have 3400 attack, and if you add on the additional 30% from the 4-piece king, there is a 102% crit damage buff provided to your entire team, right? So very nice numbers over there. The additional momentum also allows for an easier piloting time so that your on-field DPS can remain on-field even longer, so you can actually don't really need to bring Ju Fufu out unless you absolutely have to, which is gonna be especially synergistic with Yi Xuan due to a nature of ultimate spam and reliance on field time to stack on the energy for the ultimate burst window. So for the M4, it's just very straightforward crit damage, so more crit damage, more booms, you know, yippee, very nice. And for the M6, increase your chain attack damage by 30%, and upon using momentum within your fire spin state, you have this 3 pop dealing 160% of her attack as damage, and this is also considered as chain attack damage, which she can also buff in her own kit, as you can see from previous years. So more booms, more damage, you know, then you have more momentum, more might, more everything, so you know, there's not much to lose over here. The classic M6, very nice, make her deal more damage. So personally, I will feel at the end of the day, this M1 is going to be very, very strong and in my opinion, more valuable compared to the signature W engine because you can use an alternative such as, for example, Koleda's W engine, right? If you do want to call it about the cost-wise perspective, technically W engine is going to be a little bit cheaper, but in terms of absolute bang for buck, I would say this M1 is going to be far more superior. And with that, we have come to the final segment of this video, which is going to be Ju Fufu's team comps. So outside of the definitive upgrade towards Yixuan's team, Ju Fufu can also see playing almost any other DPS due to the nature of her buffs and the way she plays, with the only exception being Anomaly DPS because her core passive, the additional ability, only activates against attack or rupture class units, which means that you can't really get back your 300 decibel refund anymore, so probably not the best idea, right? So I'm just going to list a couple of potential team comps for your considerations outside of Yixuan. So first of all, and I think this is going to be one of the most synergistic ones, it's going to be fitting extremely well with Evelyn as well as Astra Yao with the chain attack buffs and less reliance on field time. So Evelyn, Astra Yao, spamming chain attacks, Ju Fufu buff chain attacks, a lot of booms, a lot of bangs, you know, very, very nice synergy. And then another team comp that is going to be quite potential is going to be Hugo plus Lighter running a dual Daze combo for almost instant Daze because of both of them dealing absolutely absurd stun damage, and because, you know, they are both considered technically burst Dazers, you can basically get the enemy down almost instantly, allowing for massive Hugo DPS R-type. Now this is also potentially possible with Anwen as well, but I'm not too sure if Anwen's burst window is going to be as strong as compared to Hugo, right? And then lastly, Soldier 11 should be able to work with this as well, because Soldier 11, after all, she is going to be the original, one of the first on-field DPS alongside with Ellen Zhou, and Ju Fufu helps us to trigger the burn a little bit faster. She's going to be fire elemental, so she deals a little bit more damage. And then outside of these few teams, for teams that are going to be less synergistic, you could think, I would say Miyabi probably still works, because first of all, it's Miyabi, she just absolutely goddamn bastard, but I would say the reliance on anomaly spams as well as the fire element of Ju Fufu doesn't exactly synergize with Yanagi nor Vivian, although she could potentially replace Lycon in a mono ice team for even more Miyabi field time, especially with an M2 Miyabi, but not having the 300 decibel refund does feel a little bit bad, right? And another team, I don't think Ju Fufu is going to be as impactful with Sanbi, right? Super Soldier NB, because Trigger pretty much synergizes with her way too well with the aftershock mechanic, so I don't think Ju Fufu is going to be replacing her role over there, but I would see her being a potential alternative, but probably just not as powerful as Commander Trigger. And lastly, all of the other anomaly units, you know, Bernice, Jane Doe, all this kind of stuff is probably not going to be considered because, you know, she don't get the refund anymore, right? So with that, we have come to the end of Ju Fufu's early access review casual tourist edition. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Are you guys going to be pulling for her? How do you guys feel about her kit? Because we have technically played with her in the story already, especially alongside Yixuan as well as the panda in the story, right? So let me know what you guys think. Well, today is going to be Scratch. Join Twitch, join YouTube, join Discord, join Twitter, join Kick. Use code POKE for 10% off. Use code POKE for 10% off, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.